If you ended 2025 feeling exhausted, busy, and wondering how you work so hard, but you still feel behind, this episode is for you. So many event professionals and service based business owners don't actually need more discipline or motivation. They need better habits and systems that support their energy and vision. Today, we're going to be talking about how to break the burnout cycle and have a thriving 2026. And we're going to be basing it on how hospitality principles can help you with reclaiming your time, energy, and passion. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Fackler, who brings a powerful lens in the hospitality industry when it comes to leadership, habits, and sustainable growth. We're going to be diving into what it takes to build habits that stick without burning out. And it's not about how hard you hustle. Thank you so very much for being a guest today, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jesse. Excited to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation because I feel like this is the time that we really need to be digging more into really how we want to go into the new year. Because right now we're recording this at the beginning of January and it's slated to come out in February. And I feel like this is really that time where we're having this introspective approach when we're thinking about, okay, going into this new year, what do I really want to do? What has worked and what hasn't worked? So I'm curious in your experience, when you've worked with leaders or business owners, and they're finding themselves at the end of the year feeling a little bit burnt out. Like, are you finding
Mm.
that they're having any patterns or habits that they're realizing that's keeping them stuck in that specific cycle?
Yeah, great question. And happy new year. I know, like we said, it's February when this is coming out, but still quarter one, still exciting. I think the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, whether you are in hospitality or not, it's year end. There's all these things that are wrapping. People spend so much time. And then on top of that, they're also trying to live their human lives of
Mhm.
getting gifts ready and wrapping and having holiday parties with their families and all of these things. Like, it's such a busy season that sometimes I think it's really hard to start the new year with this like motivation. I think people start almost like shaming themselves into like,
Mm.
gosh, it's already time to do New
Yeah.
Year's resolutions and set new goals and do all these things. But like, I haven't reset from last year. Like, I'm still recovering from everything we just finished. I
Yeah.
don't even want to think about that. And so I think what I see a lot is not taking that beat, not taking a minute and start, I think there's two ways to do it. We either start thinking about the next year in like October so
Uh-huh.
that we have time to have a reset, or we need to give ourselves the grace of saying like January is the resetting and the rebuilding, and February is when my New Year's resolutions start, or whatever that looks like for
Yeah.
you and your business. But I think that is kind of the biggest thing, is the mindset shift, is allowing ourselves the space to acknowledge that this was a really busy season and I
Mhm.
need to give myself, my body, my staff, whoever that is, the time to truly reset before we just keep going. Otherwise, I mean, that's like the definition of burnout, right? Is not stopping.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that, and I love that you said reset because sometimes people don't even think about it being a reset. Like, I
Mm.
feel that, especially when we're going from one to maybe a few part time team members, we continue to just like push, 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 and never really
Mm.
take the time to just sit back and say, okay, this is what is working, not what this did not work. And that ultimately I feel is like you accelerating potentially burnout or missing out on learning lessons that can help
Mm.
you with that next level in your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and to, when I just think back on my years in the event world, it's like the equivalent I like to compare it to is like doing a pre-con and not doing a post-con, right? Like,
Mhm.
how can we have a full event and then not sit back down with everyone involved and find out what we did well and what we didn't? Like, it's the
Yeah.
same thing in our businesses, but for some reason we don't feel the same. Like, it doesn't, a lot of people, I feel like it doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't feel important. Like a post-con or a post-mortem, it's just like something that you do, right?
Mhm.
I, at least in my world, like every event had one, and we sat down and we talked about what we did well, what we liked, what we didn't like, what was the feedback we got, all these things. But then suddenly when it's about the end of our year, when it's about our business, when it's all of those things, I think sometimes it's a little bit harder. It's a
Mhm.
harder look in the mirror. It can feel more vulnerable. You have to be open to feedback from your employees, from whoever those people are. And
Mhm.
so it's really easy to say, oh, we're so busy. Let's
Yeah.
just keep pushing. Let's just keep
Yeah.
going and not taking that time for that feedback
Yeah.
and results.
Yeah, and I think, like and I'm glad you mentioned it that way because I know I can remember vividly that moment where I used to see those moments kind of like a moment like I had to humble myself, and I feel like that's a growth in leadership that I would hope that most entrepreneurs get to at some point where you're not seeing correction as an attack and also getting that feedback from team members or from partners, like to hear like what can we do better. Like I think sometimes until someone gets to a certain level in leadership, they're in a space of thinking I know it all and, and I know what's better, compared to finding out like maybe people are helping with staging or people that you might because sometimes depending on the size of business, like when you have maybe family and friends or someone that's working with you part-time, we don't always take the time to just ask, "Hey," like, I think we should all do this really, to just say back like, "Hey, it's been great working with you." If we can't do it every event, because again, it all depends on the size of a company, we should, but I understand that a lot of people don't always do that. But it's almost taking the time to say, how has it been working with me? And like sitting with that.
Yeah, I mean, we at one team we are very value centered and value focused. So we have our core values, and within those values, we have statements about them. And one of our values is committing to continuous learning. And within that, we say feedback is a gift. Like,
Yes.
if you're not receiving feedback, you are missing half of the story. Like,
Mhm.
and especially in the world of events and in the work that you're doing, like you can't make assumptions about what went well and what didn't because you don't know. You don't
Mhm.
always know. And so it's the same in our business. Like I can't assume that I know every single thing that worked and didn't work this year for my company because there are multiple of us and I don't know what worked well and didn't work for this person in all aspects, right? Not just
Yeah.
in like the way that we deliver, but also in the systems that we're using and the processes that we've created, like taking time, for us, part of the cycle is not just building those things, but then it's the habit of using them. And
Mhm.
then we call it a cycle on purpose because you start back over. You need to then
Yes.
take the time to assess what's working again and adjust those things. And
Yeah.
that I think is what a lot of people forget.
Yeah, because then if not, that can by avoiding it, it almost, I feel like, just accelerates the burnout because what isn't working, if we're not taking the time to just evaluate, we may not even be evaluating what is keeping us anxious or keeping us going. And I think then it takes you away from being able to be strategic when we're not allowing ourselves to have a reset as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, in the hospitality, it's all about creating intentional experiences. How can leaders apply hospitality principles to themselves when it comes to habits and energy?
Yeah. So, I my a lot of my hospitality experience, it started in hotels. I worked in hotels for a long time before I moved into the venue side of events. But I think a lot about the way that we're constantly treating our guests, specifically at a hotel, but even in venues, but the constant desire to make sure that our guests were having the best experience, the constant push for their satisfaction, right? Like,
Mhm.
and the way that I see things and the way that I try to coach my clients is to start using that same mentality with your staff and with yourself.
Mhm.
So the same way that if you have an event and someone is clearly tired and you can tell that they aren't doing well standing, what is
Mhm.
your reaction as an event producer? You're going to get a chair, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very straightforward. This is what this person needs. I'm going to get it for them.
Mhm.
But when it comes to internal, to taking care of ourselves, for some reason, oftentimes we don't think we need the chair. We just need to
Mhm.
push through.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. As long as I keep doing what I'm doing, I'll feel better. Right. And then
Yeah.
that is the horrible cycle that
Mhm.
gets us into this place of burnout. And if you continue pushing and pushing and pushing through, it leads to much worse things that sometimes are health related, sometimes is
Yeah.
full breakdown. There's so many versions of what the end of that could look like. But so I think when you put that hospitality lens on, it somehow simplifies it. It makes it seem less complicated if you
Mhm.
think about whatever you are going through of like, well, what if I had a guest that was doing that? It starts to feel really obvious. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I would do this for the guest. Oh, okay. Well, why are you not doing that for yourself or for your
Yeah.
staff, right? It's often too that staff, especially in some of these some events are 14-hour days, 15-hour
Yeah.
days, 20-hour days, right? Depending on what
Mhm.
it is. Well, would we are we making sure that those people are getting ample breaks, that they're taking time? If we're in a hotel basement and there's not light, are we telling
Yeah.
people to go upstairs and get outside for a minute? Like all of
Yeah.
those things we would very obviously tell our guests to do. Okay, we're taking a break. Everyone go stretch, do that.
Mhm.
But like, do we always mirror that for ourselves and for our teams?
I like how you said that. So would you then think that doing better with self-care also allows for us to do better as leaders?
That if I could summarize it, that's the sentence. Yes. I
Okay.
think that that's what not only is like, I think it's essential. I think it's the
Mhm.
only way to truly be able to thrive at work is to take care of yourself, to be able to fill taking care of other people.
Yeah, because I can think of experiences and even speaking to other people where when a leader is willing to work themselves down to the bone, like literally to the bone, when other people aren't doing that, they see them as being lazy.
Mm,
And they see all this negative component because they're not willing to work themselves as hard as they're willing to work themselves. And it
right.
with hearing your share about that, that's what it made me think of is like people only give an allotment to what they give to themselves. So learning how to do resets allows for an individual to also have that same compassion or empathy to be the kind of leader that they really truly want to be compared to who they actually are showing up as right now. So, if you're enjoying this conversation already and some points are hitting home, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any weekly episodes like this one. Here on the Hustle Free Entrepreneur, we are designing episodes that are going to help you with creating a sustainable and profitable business without the hustle. All right, back to this episode.
Yeah, I think there's also so much like deep work
Mhm.
to do for a person like that because I would question like is are we getting the best version of you from all of that working so hard? Like if you
Mhm.
worked an hour less and recharged in the middle, would we get a better version? Are there, and so I think when that kind of like internal dialogue starts happening is when they can accept and almost like congratulate people that are doing it well because I
Mhm.
mean from my experience, that was me, right? I was the person that worked an 18-hour event day and was proud that I
Mhm.
worked all 18 hours. And when I heard like, blah, 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 this person went and took an hour and a half lunch with her family who was visiting, like, my immediate reaction was like, what? Like, how did you even
Mhm.
have time to do that? Like, you obviously weren't working hard enough, right? And
Mhm.
now, 10 years later in my career, I understand like they probably came back from that break and were
Yeah.
so much more productive than I was in the 3 hours that I was sitting there
Yeah.
dying,
Yeah,
eating
essentially.
a bag of chips at my desk while I was trying to get 7 things done and getting
Yeah.
distracted and all of that, right? Like, but you don't understand that until you've moved
Mm.
to the other side of it and you've
Yeah.
experienced it. And so that's why I think it's so important to educate people on this, especially in hospitality, because I mean, do you know how many times I've heard people say like, "Oh, we don't take lunches here. We just pay
Yes.
people through their lunch because we don't have time." And it's like, I promise you, I could find 30 minutes in your run of show and
Yeah.
a way to manage your people better that you could send people on breaks. I
Yeah.
guarantee it's possible, but you have to understand the value that it provides. And
Yeah.
if you're just looking at it from a monetary place of it's easier to just pay them through their lunch break than give them the actual time, then you're missing the whole point.
Yeah, and I think that there's like this standard or this norm inside of the industry of like toxic environments. I mean, they may or may not say it that way, but I feel as if like that's why we're not doing those resets, be it just mentally, like with the business to re strategize, or even creating environments that allows for people to thrive, because I feel
Yeah.
that the hospitality industry, like when we think about food and beverage, like that's why in the pandemic, getting people to go back to work in restaurants, people like, hold on, I don't have to deal with individuals treating me horribly, like, or working, 6 days a week, 20 plus, like they didn't have these hard truths that they were experiencing with working in the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry. So I feel like that's why a lot of people left out was due to that. So now we have a lot of people that left out and maybe they started their own business. And because they've only seen that type of environment when it comes to them running their own business and realizing I don't have to burn myself out is almost going to require for them to really reevaluate. Like, what kind of leaders do they want to be? What kind of work environment they desire that's going to actually allow for them to thrive? Because when we have a toxic environment, I can only imagine what it's like leading people when it's
Yeah.
not healthy.
Yeah. I mean, so you just told my whole story. So I am
Okay.
the person that you just shared. I worked in
Okay.
events for 11 years and I left after the pandemic and I had all of the things that you were saying. I realized like, wow, it was really nice to have 11 weeks of being with my family and actually getting to spend time with them, not exhausted
Mhm.
and sleeping in and it's still being 9 a.m. and it's not 2 p.m. because I didn't go to bed until 4. And
Mhm.
like all of those things became really valuable to me and I was like that's the life that I want in the next phase. And so I didn't understand all these things that I'm talking about now. I didn't know that there was a way to potentially bring that into hospitality, and so I left it and
Mhm.
I moved into this role that I'm in with one team. And I think so much now about how differently hospitality can be, what the results can be for people like me that loved it but
Mhm.
just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
I just had to go, I needed something new. And I think that there is a wave coming where people have really long careers in hospitality again, where the turnover is minimizing because
Mhm.
we're treating them the way they need to be treated.
Yeah, and being intentional leaders. Like, I feel that not even just in hospitality, I feel like all industries at this point, yeah, we know that for some industries or professions, it's hard to find work. Yes, let's take that out of the equation. But when we're present to the fact that you even have right now, even with how hard the job market might be, they're still leaving companies that are toxic. So I think it's important for us as business owners and why we need to do the reset every year is to be clear about like how are we intentionally creating a culture, an
Mhm.
environment for people for other people to thrive, but even for us to thrive as leaders.
Yeah. And I think the youth is really also helping us see that. I think
Hmm.
there has been such a culture shift between my parents and then
Yes.
like my cousins who are graduating high school. And when I think about the difference in that and what they are like, the expectations have shifted in a way that I find really inspiring. Like some of these younger workers have these boundaries that, again, 10 years ago, I would have been like, do you even want this job? And now
Yeah.
I'm like, good for you. Like
Yeah.
and I think seeing them choose that for themselves is showing everyone like why it matters.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're close to making some really big changes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people really are in this space of like wanting to explore exactly like what kind of life they want to live, like for
Mm,
those that are aware. And I think this is why it's important when we're talking about burnout, because one of the things that gets people from going from one to multiple team members is creating an environment and a culture that people want to be a part of.
mhm.
And if we're not allowing ourselves the time to reset and be present to what are we building, how are we feeling about things we can improve to do better, you may be missing out on the opportunity to one solve that problem because if we don't get feedback and input from our team members, then we may continue to just do what we're doing that isn't working. And it's keeping you from building the kind of business that you want or having the type of people around you. So, one of the things I thought was really interesting and what I wanted to talk about is that I think that sometimes we focus on as either entrepreneurs or team members, so either or is that we focus on the discipline. But what sometimes we're not present to is like, is it the discipline or the mindset that is going to produce success? We can continuously repeat the habits that aren't really taking us in the direction in which we're wanting to go. So, when you're working with people, how do you help them with getting more clarity on the direction that they're wanting to go?
Interesting question. Well, so I referenced a little bit ago, like the cycle. And so our cycle is 3 phases. And so first we have the awareness phase.
Mhm.
And that's really where we are doing exactly what you just asked. So it's a lot of collecting of information. It's also where we're building relationships. So, we really believe, and I think this also is a hospitality principle as well, in the power of relationship and
Yeah.
in, being able to know and understand people because you know them, you understand their motivations, you understand
Mhm.
their values, you know these things. And so that's a benefit of a coach is sometimes we are able to see things that maybe you don't because of the relationship that we've built.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of watching, sitting back and watching. You can tell a lot about a person even in just like what they choose to prioritize working on. You start
Mhm.
to see, are they, and then understanding why. So, oh, you're spending a lot of time on this. Is that because you love it? Or is that because you think that's what's working?
Mhm.
And then that leads to conversation. And so we uncover a lot in this awareness phase. And then we move into building structure. So,
Mhm.
structure is the next one where we start all these structures. And then our third phase is habit. And that's where we get into the practice, repetition, all of those things. And that's why when I said earlier, it's a cycle. Once it's become a habit, now we're back in awareness. How is
Mhm.
it working? Do we like
Yeah.
these things? What feedback are we getting from people? All of that. And then we adjust the structure, right? So it
Yeah.
continues. But I think a huge piece of it is building the relationship, knowing the people, understanding them as humans,
Mhm.
understanding their business, and then figuring that out from there.
I like that framework because I feel that it's important and that's why it's important to take the pause is to have that awareness. And I feel
Mm,
that I wish that more entrepreneurs well, I think two parts of it is that one, a company has to get to a certain level to see the importance of that invest. I love that you mentioned about the awareness component. And I feel that for a lot of people, the biggest issue that they've come into to even figure like I need awareness is the humility to say I don't know it.
mm,
Like for someone to work with a coach, I wish more business owners got to that place. But again, that I feel that what is promoted online about being a business owner and what it takes to succeed as a business owner are two different conversations.
mm.
And I think that for someone to come to a coach because they want to become aware of what's wrong is that there has to be a humility or like they hit a wall of probably frustration, I would assume, that they know they need to work with someone to get that next level breakthrough. what are you finding when people are coming to your company to like, we need a solution? Is it that they're aware that something's broken, or are they completely oblivious that something isn't happening?
It's a mixture of the two. I think it's different for different clients. Um, but oftentimes, whatever, if they're coming because they think something's broken, they're usually wrong about what is broken.
Yes.
And so I like to refer to it often as like going to a doctor and saying that your shoulder hurts, and they eventually figure out that it's your neck that's hurting,
Yeah.
and your neck is creating the issue for your shoulder, right? Or like, oh, you think you're having knee pain, but it's actually the way you're sleeping and your hip is whatever, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very similar in the business coaching side. Is typically someone comes in saying, I'm having an issue with this and I need you guys to help us fix this.
Yeah.
And then what we uncover is something very different. And that is a symptom, or the issue they thought is a symptom from the bigger thing.
Yeah, and with you explaining it that way, I feel like I experience that often with doing system build outs for companies. And so I'm a pro for a specific CRM, and people will come like, "Oh, I just need to build this. It got to be the platform." And then they're telling me what they're doing, and I'm just like, it's not the platform. It's how you're doing what you're doing, because you cannot put confusion into a platform. And what I find is that I often am like, I think you might need coaching or something else, because I feel that, like you mentioned, what they think is the problem isn't the problem. Or if they come to me and I can feel the tension of them pretty much juggling a whole bunch of things at one time. And to me, that's always an indication of a breakdown of something that could be going smoother. Like, the system, the CRM isn't going to fix that. It's finding out, how do you improve your processes? And the only way you can really figure out how to improve your processes is having probably an outsider looking in, because it's, even when I'm talking to people doing their systems, when they say I'm doing X, Y, Z, I'm like, well, why haven't you thought to do it this way? And it's like, I never thought. And, or they'll say, like, I never thought, like, if I didn't talk to you, I wouldn't have built this out.
Mm.
Because when we're so close to it, unless you have that kind of brain, because like, I feel like every team company needs to have someone that can be a analyzer. And sometimes with creatives, that is not their strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are going to listen to it and feel like it's a jab. No, like, some create, like, you just rather, like,
Feedback is a gift, everyone.
yes,
Feedback is
it
a
is.
gift.
Some people rather just think about all the cool, fun stuff, and they're like, I don't want to really think about any of the administrative side. I don't want to think about any of the data. Like, they're like, data, I'm not good at numbers, like all of that stuff. And I think that's the part too about being a leader and being able to step back for a moment. It will allow for you to allow the space for self-awareness, to really get present to, okay, I know that X, Y, and Z needs to happen inside of my business. I can either keep pushing through and doing it until, unfortunately, you burn out. And I've had it where vendors have passed out going grocery shopping. I've had it where people had unexpected car accidents, all that stuff, because everything is frantic. Everything is frantic. And so when we don't allow ourselves to sit back and say, okay, this is what needs to happen so that things can go better, what happens is that we just keep repeating that cycle until we either, I feel like there's no way out of burnout. I don't know. Like, what is your experience? Like, what are your thoughts? One thing I see over and over again is that burnout isn't just an emotional feeling. It's linked to how you're running your business and its operations. When your business does not support your habits, you're carrying everything mentally in your day to day. That's why tools like my business system audit are helpful for entrepreneurs just like you. It's intended to help you with understanding your workflows, boundaries, and habits to grow a business that's going to bring you joy without the stress. And by working with me, it takes out all of the guesswork and helping you get clarity to how to fix it. Click below to be able to schedule your audit today. Now back to the episode.
Well, we justify it, right? I don't
Mm,
even think we see it as burnout. It's like that's a part of the job. And
mm,
you just want to shake someone and be like, wake up. Like passing
yeah.
out, going to the grocery store is not part of the job.
No.
And if that is where you're at, we have a lot of work to do, right? And
Mhm,
it's reminding, it's boundary setting. It's so many things. I mean, a client that we work with, the journey that they have been on from when they started with us to now, just in terms of boundary setting, like,
mm.
they weren't even using like any sort of Google Chat or anything. They were just texting.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
well, texting, guess what? That comes through any hour of the day.
Yeah.
And so now you either have the person, if you put boundaries of, hey, don't text, only text between these hours. Okay,
Mhm,
well, now I have to create a process of making notes to know what I need to text you at the
yeah.
other time. Or if it's like, no, just text whenever it comes through. Well, now this person has zero boundaries in their home life. So, like,
Yes.
step one was like, we need a software for y'all to be able to send a chat any hour of the night. If it pops
Yeah.
in your head, you can send it,
Yeah.
but you can also set your notification settings and not receive them until it's necessary. And
Yeah.
so, like, something as simple as that. I mean, that was such a simple fix, but
Mhm,
the amount of peace that it's brought to this team
mhm.
of saying, man, I felt like even when I wasn't working, I was working because I was
Yeah.
getting messages and I was checking them and I was this and I was that. And to be able to say, I'm turning off the notifications because I'm going to bed and not
Mhm.
waking up to my phone buzzing at 2 a.m. from my CEO,
Yeah.
like, is a big deal for them. But I think it's that justification. It starts to feel like that's
Uh-huh.
just the norm. That's just what we do. And that's kind of something that we've talked about a lot at one team as far as like when you're in an industry that is guest, or we also work with a lot of healthcare, so guest or
Mm.
patient centered. I think burnout is even more prevalent
Yeah.
because you're constantly, it's like the mission almost gets in the way
Mm.
of self-preservation because you
Yes.
have this driving mission of like, I'm doing it for the guest, I'm doing it for the patient. Oh, I can push a little bit harder for the guest experience.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I really like that analogy of like, treat yourself as the guest,
Yes.
treat your team as the guest. And if you are treating them the way that you want your guests treated, I promise the results are going to be even better. They're going to show up better. And in some ways, yes, does that mean maybe you need to hire an extra person on event day to fill in those breaks? Maybe. But
Mhm.
like, that money spent is in the long run going to save your business, like truly.
Yeah. And I think when you have that awareness, if you're needing that other person, then you just bill accordingly. But if you don't take the time to actually review things, you just keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on. And I think that that's that's the part about taking time to reevaluate.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we didn't even talk about reevaluating in terms of budgets, too, right? Like,
Mhm.
again, another client that we're working on hadn't changed their rates in 5 years
Oh, no.
and hadn't even like thought about or looked at. And so, we sat down, we did a full assessment of looked at what are you to hire this person, what are you spending, all of these things, and like
Mhm.
did an analysis and realized like you're losing money
Yeah.
when you go on these projects, but because of the process that they had up and the way that they were looking at things, it was so separated that they
Mhm.
were looking over here and saying, we're charging this is the upcharge, this is what we're making, and
Mhm.
they weren't even looking at this piece against it, right?
Yeah.
And so like 5 years later, we said, hey, we flagged it when we were doing all of our, and again, that's not something, we didn't go in with her saying, I need to figure out how to make sure I'm making money. We
Mhm.
went in for her saying, I'm constantly burned out, I'm tired, I don't know how to keep this afloat, all of these things. And
Mhm.
through conversations, through getting to know her, through talking, it was we started pulling a thread. Oh, what about financials? How is this? What is this? Oh, you
Mhm.
haven't done that in 5 years. We should talk about that. Let's look
Yeah.
at it. Then we built reports to be able to make comparisons. And then we got to this root issue of like, well, you're not really making money. And that's probably a huge stressor. And that's
Yeah.
probably making you feel a lot of anxiety and feel all these things. And, then that uncovered this huge different thing than what we were there for. And so, but it does, to your point, a very long time ago, it does take a very large amount of being vulnerable. You have to
Yes.
be willing to say, and it's not even to say like I'm doing something wrong. It's willing to say there's a better way to do this and I
Yes.
want to learn that. And I
Yeah.
think that is the mindset that people need to have going into whatever kind of coaching it looks like, even if it's
Mhm.
working to get more different softwares or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
saying there are other people that can help me get better.
Yeah.
And that's the positive spin, I think.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly because a lot of times people get into this is just how we've been doing it
Mm,
instead of being able to
favorite
look
quote.
at, like, because I tell people, like with the consulting side, the hardest people to help with making things work better are the ones that have been more established because their commitment to dysfunction should be
Mm,
studied. Like, and it depends on the business owner. Like, some business owners are very, like, innovative and open to new and exciting ideas, and you have those that just rather continue to still use paper and pen to do everything because they don't want to use a computer or
yeah.
any of those different things or update their website. You're like, "That website clearly looks like it was done in the late '90s," but they just like, "Well, it's not broken." Like, "Yes, it
Mm,
is." So, like, I think that even from what I'm hearing, is important for business owners and leaders as they're hearing this is to never stop being curious.
absolutely.
And when you're being curious, then it allows for you to really look at what habits are no longer serving you. And so that leads me into the question I have is like, what's one common habit you see leaders needing to break as they move into the new year? And what should replace it instead?
Multitasking.
Yes.
One of our big like core beliefs is that multitasking is a myth.
Yes.
So is if you look at brain science, wow, I'm sure that sounds really smart. But if you look at the science of how the brain functions, it truly cannot do two things at the same time
Mhm.
that involve thought. So
Yeah.
obviously, like you can think about something and walk at the same time, but you cannot physically listen to something and read
Mhm.
and hear and comprehend both at the same time. The brain just can't do. And yet, for some reason, especially in these faster paced environments like hospitality,
Mhm.
we get into this thought of, oh, I can do three things at the same time. And look at how efficient I can be if I'm, you know, in a meeting where they're talking about my event and I'm also replying to emails and I have my chat up with my team asking me questions. I can do all three at the same time. Okay. Well, how many times have we been in a meeting when you can see someone's not paying attention and
Mhm.
then they ask you to repeat something that you already said and you're like if you were just listening and focused and paying attention, you would know the answer.
Yes.
So that's one of our first things is we make it very clear like multitasking doesn't exist here.
Mhm.
We really try to help people build the habits of we call it single tasking and prioritizing. So prioritization, priority is intended to be a singular word. You don't have priorities, you have a priority, and we
Mhm.
work towards one before we move to the next. And I know in the hospitality world, I'm sure some of these listeners are like, does she even know what we do all day? Because it would be literally impossible to only focus on one thing. But it really is amazing if you're able to find a way to do that, even
Mm.
if it's in short chunks,
Yeah.
to say, this whole meeting, I am closing everything else. Nothing else is open. I will
Yeah.
check it later. And I will build a 10-minute calendar block for myself after the meeting to catch up on whatever I missed before I do
Yeah.
the next thing.
Yeah.
And then when I'm, working on something that requires deep attention, I'm getting into deep space and I'm closing everything else again. Like
Mhm.
the constant task switching
Yeah.
is so not only energy draining, but
Mhm.
actually depleting of time
Yes.
because the amount of time it takes to refocus on whatever it is. How many times have you read the same email four times
Mhm.
because you started reading it and then got distracted and then read it again and then got distracted and then you start responding and then you get distracted and now I've reread it six times and I can't remember what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
But if I just sat down and did that, I would have responded really quickly and I probably would have gotten 15 minutes back of my day
Yeah.
instead of reading the same email five more times. So
Yeah.
it's little things like that. I think that is the biggest misconception is that I'm getting more done by multitasking And
Mhm.
we would argue that you are getting significantly less done than doing one thing at a time.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And the thing is that again, I feel that in the hospitality industry, their commitment to brokenness or burnout or stressful, because I say that it's one of those industries where everyone's house is on fire and they're like, but this is normal. And no one's thinking our house should not be on fire. So
Mm,
it's being embraced by the chaos where in any other industry, that would not be the norm. Like
yeah,
someone isn't doing UX design and a bunch of things at the same time. No, because if they're doing coding, they got to focus on coding.
right.
And the thing about it is that, yes, that might be counterintuitive to what you've known inside of the industry, but the only way you break that habit is actually exploring how to do it. Like,
Mhm,
I know that there's this thought, like, my clients should reach out to me all the time. No, they should not. Like, I am very clear on boundaries because the thing is, I remember years ago starting my business, I was like, I shouldn't always feel anxious. Like, I should not feel stressed even when I don't have an event going on. Like, I had to sit here and think to myself, with my event business, I knew where I wanted to take it. And I'm like, I'm not even halfway there yet. And if I feel
mm,
like I'm about to crack under pressure because I don't put boundaries into place, how can I ever see my true vision? Because I know that it'll be hard to keep people if I can't figure out how to make this something enjoyable for me to do. And I think
mhm.
that that's important for us when we have those habits, because I do find that pushback when it comes inside of our industry. Yeah, there's always a lot of things to happen, but if you never take the time to create that structure, like time, I'm big on schedule blocking. I love schedule blocking. I'm big on my phone goes into do not disturb at certain times of the day. I'm big on having my phone is on no vibrate and no ringing because I realized that I was training myself to not have boundaries.
Mhm.
And the thing about that is then you will burn out. There's no way to not burn out when you don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
It literally is no way.
Yeah, and I think 2 things in response to what you said. One, about the house being on fire. I think we also have created a space where everything feels like the house is on fire. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes can we assess, and is it just a little trash can fire and we can
Yeah.
put it out really simple, but we think the house is on fire? Like, so I think that's one thing. Um I also think that people have this idea, especially in hospitality, that like if I don't respond to someone immediately,
Mhm.
then I suck at my job. People
Yeah.
assume if they don't hear, then I'm not working. I'm not quick enough. I didn't, whatever. And so I also really like the idea of putting on some sort of, either on, if it's a voicemail, a text responder, or just an auto reply to your email
Mhm.
saying like, I'm currently working on something. I will respond to you in the next 3 hours.
Yes.
When people are given an answer to a boundary, they are
Yes.
so much more respectful of it
Yeah.
and almost like in awe of it than if they
Mhm.
just don't hear from you, right? And so
Yes.
that's something that I like to kind of help my clients as well, is because they start to get in this phase of like there's no way that I could close my emails because I pride myself on replying to someone in 5 minutes. And I'm
Oh,
like,
no.
that's really cool. However, you are setting a very unreasonable expectation, and you could just tell them that you're doing something and you'll respond within blank time. And that seems to give people who are not quite ready to
Mhm.
completely disconnect yet a
Mhm.
sense. It's like a middle step of relief of like, okay, they're getting a reply from me, it's immediate, and it's giving them an expectation of when they can hear from me.
Mhm.
And that seems to help. So if that is helpful to anyone listening that's sitting here thinking like, oh, I could never,
Yeah.
there are like little middle ways that we can start the process to feel a little
Baby
better.
steps. Yeah, because there's nothing about me that thinks I need to respond back in 5 minutes, like, not even in my personal life.
Yeah. But
Ah,
that's probably taken a lot of growth to get there. I'm sure
yeah.
in the beginning, if someone reached out, you wanted to respond right away. You were excited. You were proud of what you were building, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it probably was. But then I know that through the journey of just realizing how important it is to protect my mental space. And yeah, that probably was because even with family, I'm like, why are y'all like, don't do that. And I think that the biggest part about it was that you just have to voice it.
Mm,
And there's a way to express boundaries. And I one of the things I like about auto responses or setting a standard of expectation is give best case scenario that you can over deliver on. I
yes.
wouldn't even say a 3-hour standpoint. Like this morning, I mean, it's now 2:28 where I'm at. Um, I've been on Zooms and recordings and doing the podcast since 10 a.m. I would not had been able to completed that 10-hour, like that
Sure.
3-hour window. So I like to say within 24 hours, knowing that I typically will respond back within 12 or 8.
Absolutely.
So like it's always about blowing people away. So like if you know that you're busy and you're not going to always be able to respond back in an hour. You don't want it to be that now because you've given them a promise that's going to be hard for you to be consistent at making,
Hmm.
that you are now they're coming back to you because you said you're going to respond in an hour and now
Yes.
it's 2 hours. So I rather always give myself extra time and over, what's the word I want to use?
Overpromise.
Over promise.
Or
Yeah.
sorry, the other way.
No,
Underpromise,
under promise and
overdeliver.
over
Yeah.
yes, exactly. I'd rather do that because I'm like, I don't want it to be that someone's feeling as if I'm not communicating in a healthy
Right.
way. And I think that that's what also creates that burnout because we're not even communicating to people what would be a valid or acceptable way to for them to reach out to you or for you to respond back to them. And I think at the core of it sometimes it's just that we haven't always put into perspective serving with excellence. And excellence isn't you feeling frustrated and flustered because you said that I'm going to respond in an hour, but I'm prepping for an event. Or I'm running out the door, and because I've set this unrealistic expectation, now I'm in the car having to respond back to emails and all these different things.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not communicating it, in the beginning, you might feel fired up, but someone is 15 years into this, you're going to feel like on the floor and unless you're a drinker. I don't drink, so I'm sure if I was, I would be drinking a lot or sedating myself in some kind of form of fashion
Yeah.
to to keep at that level. And I think that as business owners, we have to be present to when we're talking about burnout and we're talking about the habits that we're trying to create is coming down into feeling like what is actually a sustainable habit that I can
Hmm.
stick to, not just for 2026 but in 2036 if you're
Right.
intending to have a business that long because you don't it's harder to break someone out of a habit, meaning clients, customers and things like that. It's harder to break them out of a habit than for you to just start with a positive one and a positive expectation, because if you have people that work with you for 5 years, now you're like, oh, I have boundaries. They're like, I used to be able to text you at 1 o'clock.
Hmm.
Like, what do you, what do you mean? So one of the things I want to ask is like for someone that's listening who wants 2026 to feel different because they're like, I'm resonating with what y'all are talking about. I am feeling anxious. I am someone that's trying to multitask and I'm dropping the ball. Things are falling through the cracks. Like, but I know that I want for this year and moving forward for it to feel different. What are 2 to 3 sustainable habits you'll recommend that they focus on first?
I mean, I really do think what we just talked about with multitasking is number one. Like calendar blocking, I would say is a part of that, or
Yeah.
maybe number two if you see them as separate. But we have this concept that, like, when something's on a to do list, it feels like you could get through. If you have 10 things written on a to do list, maybe that feels attainable just looking at the list.
Uh,
And then when you start getting into it and spending time doing it, you finish two, and now you feel like a failure because you've only done 2 out of 10. Whereas when we start calendar blocking and being realistic about the time that a task takes instead of just having a list of them,
uh,
we start to see, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours on social media. Well, now I can put that on my calendar and see
yeah.
how many things and set myself up for a realistic, what can I accomplish in this day?
Mhm.
And then it leaves you with choices. So I like to say, I can either finish the task list and I see when I look at my calendar that that's maybe a 10-hour day,
Uh-huh.
or I can say, I don't have the capacity for that. I have 7 hours today. So, what is flexible that can move to another time? And so, I really like calendar blocking, not because a lot of people, the reaction that I get is like, that would stress me out to have my day down to the minute. And it's like, well, nothing about calendar blocking says that it all has to stay that way. It's showing you, if you make a choice, what it affects.
Uh-huh.
So if I choose to spend more time on this thing, then what is moving away from today? Or
Yeah.
if I choose to go out for lunch and take an hour instead of 30 minutes, what am I not going to get done?
Yeah.
I also really like calendar blocking because you can pre-put in the things that you need to do. So on my calendar, every day, there's a 30-minute lunch blocked. There is a stretch 10-minute walk around my building in the morning, and there's one in the afternoon. And
Mhm.
they are pre-populated every day. So
Yeah.
when I start building my calendar, I build around those. And
Yeah.
so I know in my day, things are going to be a priority. Now, are there days that I move them because something else is a higher priority? Absolutely, but that's a choice that I make. It's
Yeah.
something that I'm saying, okay, today I'm not going to take my morning walk because I really need to get these things done, but I'll do it tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
And so I really like calendar blocking for that. And then I think the third, kind of what we were talking about with the auto response and setting timelines, I think for some reason, we operate that way a lot externally, but not always internally.
Uh-huh.
And the lack of an answer per se. So if I say to someone on my team, hey, can you get this done for me? And they're like, yeah, no problem. And that's where the story ends. Now it's eating at me. What's the status update? Have
Yeah.
they started working on it? Now I want to send a message. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Right? Do you have any questions? Or what's the status? Or when will you have this to me? Like, and now we're wasting a lot of time and energy. Even if I'm not actually messaging them, how much am I thinking about it? Like, oh, are they doing that? Did they, whatever.
Yeah.
Versus if I send a message saying, hey, can you get this done and back to me by end of today?
Yeah.
Now they have to respond either saying absolutely or like, hey, I've got a lot going on today. Can I have it to you by noon tomorrow? And now we've set an expectation and the energy has left for me to be thinking about it because I just have an expectation of, oh, I'll get it tomorrow at noon.
Uh-huh.
And I know, and I think that that is something that is really helpful on both ends. I also
Yeah.
think as the doer, like if my CEO sends me something, I want him to tell me what his expectation is because otherwise I immediately assume like, oh, this is now the priority, right? And if I
Uh-huh.
send it back, there's been times that he's like, wow, you did that fast. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, because I stopped working on everything else to get
Uh-huh.
it to you.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, I didn't want that. Like I was just giving you something to work on,
Yeah.
it's being really direct about what you want or need from someone so that they understand the priority and where that falls in what they're delivering. And I think it works the same way for clients too. Like
Uh-huh.
if I'm ever in a meeting with a client, anytime that there's a deliverable for me, I set a deadline of when they can expect it because it gives me a sense of being able to prioritize and it lets them know, hey, you're not going to get this deliverable for 4 days
Uh-huh.
and I'll get it to you in 4 days. And then it's on them to either say that that's not appropriate for what they need,
Uh-huh.
or they're like, perfect, we'll see it then. And now that communication doesn't have to happen for updates.
Yeah. I think those are some really great tips. Like, I love schedule blocking or calendar blocking. Like, even at the beginning, like the last few days, I've been even looking at, okay, what can I do better with my calendar blocking so that I'm efficiently using my time. Like, I have this podcast and another podcast, and then I do these different things. I'm like, it probably makes more sense to just do bi-weekly content creation days
Hmm.
instead of breaking it down, these different I'm like that I mean, when I record or episodes with people, that's different, but for solo content, I'm like, it'd probably be more efficient for me time wise to have specific days twice a month that I'm creating content, and then have specific days where I'm actually editing content, and specific days where we're writing the copy for that
Yep.
content. I'm like, there's no reason why I should be doing that multiple times in a week. Like, that's not
Yep.
effective because we all have time. It just comes down to how we're using that specific
Mhm.
time. So this has been so helpful, and I've been enjoying everything that we've been talking about because I feel that burnout, especially right now, I feel like it became a buzzword in the pandemic, but it's
Mm.
even becoming something that people are more openly discussing now because
Yeah.
we've been ingrained into just hustling as a culture at this point, and our minds and our bodies just cannot handle it. And we're all in
Mm.
this position where we're thinking to ourselves, like, how do I go into this upcoming year in a way that's going to actually keep me enlightened or keep me like excited is the best word for the future ahead. So I would love for you to share like how for people to reach out to you and the best ways to hear about your services.
Yeah. Well, we are on Instagram. So our handle is at oneteampartners.thrive, and one is spelled out ONE. So anyone can always DM on Instagram. I personally am also on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn often. Melissa Fackler on LinkedIn. And then we do have a learning community. It's currently on school, and that's a community where for a very low monthly cost, you are able to join our community and have access to resources. And then we do group coaching calls twice a week. And so in those coaching calls, you're able to ask the coaches questions and also interact with other solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and just talk. Our community is called Big Talk because we believe that leadership is full of a lot of small talk, but big talk is where big change happens. And so we want to host a space for those big conversations. So those are kind of three ways to learn more about our services and to get in touch with us.
I love that. I think that that's necessary. I hope people click on the links. I'll make sure to have it in the captions for those of you that are watching on YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being a guest today, Melissa. And I hope that everyone that's listening was able to get some really great tools and tips to being able to thrive in their business.
So thank you so much for having me, Jesse. I loved it too. Have a
So,
good one.
me too. Wow, this conversation has been amazing. Thank you so very much for being a guest on today's episode, Melissa. This conversation has been a direct reminder as to why burning out isn't about you just doing more. It's about taking the time to do things differently. And as you're starting to go into 2026 with your business, I want for you to reflect and ask yourself this question: what habit do I need to break to protect my energy and peace with growing my business? Because it's important to remember burning out will impact your leadership. So take a moment and drop a comment and let me know what's one thing you're going to be letting go of in 2026 inside of your business.